What's up, superhumans? BT here. Before we jump into the 4 reasons I upgraded from the 14 Pro Max to the iPhone 16 Pro Max, 2 things. Number 1, I did not upgrade for any of the Apple Intelligence AI updates. All right, so if you were thinking that's what you were gonna see in this video, you're not. Number 2, I'm not an iPhone reviewer, and I upgraded for 4 very specific reasons. So this is not going to be a complete breakdown of everything that the 16 does. I have zero interest in doing that. That being said, let's jump into reason number 1. It's real simple here. I'm sick of this stupid lightning port. This is stupid. It's dumb. Now, there are reasons why USB-C is just better than lightning. 1, you can run more power through it. I think it's 45 watts on a fast charge, and now MagSafe 2.0 gets 25 watts instead of 15. Personally, for me, that was a big one. That was one thing I really wanted out of my MagSafe charging, and I got it. Data throughput is much higher on USB-C than it is lightning. So, and we're gonna need that for some of the reasons that we're gonna discuss later on. Reason number 2, battery life. You see, with so many iPhones and Apple Watches, iPads, Apple's really good about putting a chip in there and a processor that makes the phone, the watch, or the iPad much more efficient, and therefore you get better battery life. That was kind of a tongue twister. But especially like with the watch, we've been asking, can you just put a bigger freaking battery in the thing? Like, we get that you're making it more efficient, but also stick a bigger battery in it, please. Well, that's what we got on the iPhone 16 Pro Max, at least. The 14 Pro Max, this one, 4,323 milliamp hour battery, all right, in the 14 Pro Max. The 16 Pro Max has a 4,685 milliamp hour battery. These are really tough for me to say. Initially, I was like, it's meh. But then I realized, Brandon, you're not even charging it to 100%. That's right. To save on battery life, this is something that's new in there. You can really go in and customize how, what percentage you want to charge to keep your battery healthy for the life of the battery, kind of like my Tesla. And so I dropped it to 80%, and I realized you haven't been charging it all the way. And I'm using this phone all day long for these tests, just punishing the crap out of it with videos, photo editing, you name it. And I usually end the day with still like 20%. So I'm only using like 60% of the battery over an entire day. Now, this isn't quite the most fair comparison because this thing is 2 years old. Of course, there's some battery degradation. It's just not gonna be as efficient as a brand new battery. But I will often charge this fully once, sometimes twice, if I'm going about it the same way. All right, so I do think having the bigger battery, having a more efficient chip and a more efficient processor, and we'll get to the thermals here in a second, has made for a rather remarkable battery update from the 14. No clue about the 15, I don't own it. But from the 14, I'm really happy with the upgrade to the battery. Reason number 3. Okay, this is where it starts to get very specific to me. I shoot a lot of photos, okay? This camera or another camera, I've got a few, they're on me all day long. And I edit the photos basically exclusively off my phone. And one thing I hate about the 14 Pro Max is that while you're editing, I'll make my edits, I will copy them, and then I will start to paste them in those photos. And normally out of 100 shots, I'm probably taking home 10 keepers, all right? By the time I get to photo number 3, this thing has thermal throttled so bad that the brightness of the screen drops to like 20%, thus making it almost impossible to edit because exposure is a big part of editing. And if the screen is only at 20% brightness, it's so dark, you're like, I don't know. There's so many times where I have to wait for this thing to cool off and it takes a long time. And then I start to editing and immediately screen dies again. So for me, during the keynote, they mentioned that the 16 is going to be made in a different manner, and some of those materials would help with thermal performance. Well, I can tell you that this phone gets just as hot as this phone, but now here's a big but. This thing performs so much better than this. They get the same temperature. They still are really hot in the hands. However, if I'm editing, I have yet to see this thing take a hit on display brightness. Now, after 2 years, it's maybe a different conversation.
Does the new iPhone 16 overheat?
He did a thermal performance test using the 14, the 15, and I think the S24, maybe even another phone. And the iPhone 16 Pro kicked ass when it came to thermal performance. I give it a big thumbs up. Reason number 4, probably the most me-specific reason out there. I'm a content creator, a YouTuber, and typically what I shoot my YouTube videos on looks a little something like this. This is a beautiful camera and a beautiful lens, and it does everything I need it to do, but it's huge. It's massive, and it's crazy heavy. It's way heavier than you might think. And while it does produce an amazing image, it is not that convenient. It's kind of cumbersome. If I bring this with me, well, I'm also wearing a sling. If I want to bring another lens just to give me more functionality, well, now I've committed to a backpack, right? So great image quality, but it's expensive, it's huge, it's heavy, and it requires a backpack. Now, with the 15, we got a huge video quality improvement. The 16 also got that in the form of Apple ProRes. All right, ProRes is a codec that Apple created, and when put into Final Cut Pro, which is also Apple's like video editor, it runs really smoothly and the footage looks great. Well, this has Apple ProRes along with the 15, and it also has a log. Now, I'm not gonna like wax on about what log is, but basically the image looks really flat. And that gives us, the creators, the colorists, the editors, a lot more leeway with how we want that image to look. On a normal phone, like the 14 Pro Max, we're shooting in HDR or SDR. The look is kind of already baked into that. We don't have a lot of flexibility, both in exposure, dynamic range, like how bright we want an image or how dark we want an image, or the colors we can use. We're kind of, I was looking for another expression, but I missed it. So the idea that I could take this little tiny thing that fits into my pant pocket and potentially, because this also shoots log, and potentially replace it, that is incredibly enticing. Is that the case though? Not really. It's kind of disappointing. Let me explain. I got like 6 cameras right here in just a little tiny spot, and it's giving me anxiety. I already talked about log. That's great. Log gets us a little closer. However, if you're not somebody that is shooting in log and has a ton of experience coloring, log might just be an extra step that you don't want to deal with, right? If I put this into my editor, it comes up very flat. And then I go, okay, well, maybe I gotta find an Apple LUT, a Rec 709 conversion LUT for it. And if you're already like, what the hell does that mean? Log is probably not for you. But maybe you wanna grade it with something like Film Convert Nitrate. And that's a lot of fun, but that takes a lot of time. If you're using your phone to capture footage for quick turnaround, log isn't the way to go. And if log isn't the way to go, why not just use this? Because it doesn't have log to begin with. Now there's a second problem with Apple ProRes and log, and that's the bit rate. That means how much space in your camera's hard drive is this thing taking up to shoot that video? Well, by default, what you shoot in the codec is Apple ProRes HQ, high quality. That is by default what you're shooting. For a 1-minute clip, you're looking at 5 gigs of data. That's a ton of data. I only get 39 minutes of record time if I shoot in Apple ProRes HQ log, okay? So just so you know, if you bought the smallest version of this phone and you plan on shooting in the ProRes HQ log, you're going to crush your memory so damn fast. Now, if you want to bypass sending all of that footage directly to your phone's hard drive and crushing all of this space. Well, now you can use an SSD. Because of this USB-C down at the bottom, if we use a little USB-C cable and a portable SSD like the Samsung T5, we can record directly to this. And this is 2 terabytes, and you can get this thing for like $100. So this is a solution, but you are spending a lot more money to get some storage. You've got to buy a cable that's fast enough that it can actually transfer. And if you want to shoot 4K 60 or 4K 120 off the phone in that ProRes format, you have to have an SSD anyway. So you're looking at like $100 or $200 for an SSD, depending on the size. You got to buy this cable. Then you got to find some way to attach the two together. So you can do it that way, but it is kind of cumbersome. There is a way to get the log footage, but also use a codec that's so much smaller in size that you're not having to use one of these. And that is with the Blackmagic camera app. In there, you can switch it from Apple ProRes HQ to Apple ProRes, Apple ProRes LT, Apple ProRes 422, or a compressed codec like H.264 or H.265. This is going to greatly reduce the size of that file. Here's the problem with that. You can no longer record directly to an SSD. You're recording in the phone, and you can move the files from the phone to the SSD, but that means the workflow is incredibly cumbersome. It takes a long time. For some reason, they can't let you just record directly to the SSD, and that's a shame. I mean, I might be wrong, but I talked to my buddy Michael Tobin, who's like an expert in shooting video on the iPhone, and that's what he told me. So on one hand, you either get a better workflow, but a huge bitrate, and you're just gonna destroy your storage, or with the Blackmagic camera app, you get a horrible workflow, but really, really tiny data and storage sizes, like file sizes. Is the image quality even worth it to go through all of that for me to replace this? No, it's not. I'm gonna be honest. The camera I'm shooting on right now, the Lumix S5 II, looks absolutely amazing, and it cost me $1,300. It was $200 cheaper than the phone, and it uses an SD card and shoots incredible image quality with file sizes that are far, far smaller than the native ProRes HQ. I take those out on this SD card, plug them into my computer, hit import, they're ready to go in just seconds. For me, the only thing I give up is size, but everything else is way better than this. So if I were to do this again, I would not upgrade for video on this, because I would much rather just shoot the regular Apple video off of a 14, because that's what I'm doing anyway. I'm not going to spend the time to grade the log to make it look marginally better than what this comes out of the camera. Let me just clarify by saying, I am not saying you can't make an amazing looking video with an iPhone, especially this new iPhone 16 Pro. If you want the perfect example of that, check out my buddy Joey Helms' new video shot on iPhone 16 Pro.
Time. So elusive.
You will not believe that this entire video was shot on an iPhone. It's absolutely breathtaking and incredible to see what an iPhone can do in the right hands. What I am saying is that for my situation, my needs, and my taste, my personal taste, it doesn't make a lot of sense to upgrade from the 14 to the 16 to get a marginally better video quality. It is better, but it's marginally better, and make the workflow more difficult. This takes time, whereas this is just plug and play. When I have a camera, that's actually a little cheaper than the phone and shoots substantially better looking video than this and has the same or even easier workflow than this. That's all I'm saying. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, back to the video. Let's talk about this. This is the camera control. I didn't really mention it in that opening spiel. Don't worry about it. Camera control, boop, boop, is a thing that opens your camera. There's a few problems with it. One, it was completely unnecessary to begin with. You see, if I turn off my camera and then I pull it out of my pocket, you'll see a camera thing right there. I tap that, boom, I'm in my camera. On the 15, we also got the action button. You can map this to your camera. If I hold it down, boop, camera. Why do we need a third option? Just so we can make it feel a little more like a camera? Well, here's problem number 2. The button for it is way too far over here. It needs to be over here. It's kind of uncomfortable, to be honest. And unless you change it to double tap, if it's the single tap, you're constantly hitting it and opening it. Or worse yet, when it's open, you're accidentally taking a photo or a video. It's really annoying. Problem number 3 with the camera control button, it requires a decent amount of force to fire it. And so you get one of these things, you get this thing called shutter shock. The amount of pressure it takes to push it in actually moves the camera ever so slightly, and you can get blurry images because of it. Guys, I'm gonna tell you, everything that you can do on camera control, whether it's like pressing that down and moving it by, sliding your feet, it's so much easier to just tap on the screen. Like, the screen is such a better interface than this freaking camera control button. I really hope they ditch it in the 17. Give us a folding phone with no freaking button, you gotta win. Now, as far as the camera quality is concerned, I don't care. Straight up, if you wanna watch somebody that's gonna compare the images out of the camera from the 15, the 14, the 12, whatever, go watch Tyler Stallman. He's a genius, he really cares, and his videos are incredible. I wanna take a photo with an actual camera. I care more so about the process and being a part of the process. And for me, this is how I like to take a photo. This is how I like to take a photo. I don't like taking photos with a camera, so I don't really care. For those 4 reasons, I would not upgrade from the 14 Pro Max to the 16 Pro Max. However, I have made my bed and now I have to sleep in it. Why am I keeping this then? Well, frankly, I ran over the 14-day window where I can return this. So there you have it. I'm kind of stuck with it, but I can trade this in and save myself $500. So this camera is going to end up costing me closer to $1,100 than 16, which is nice. Now, it's not all poo-poo. Okay, there are some really cool things that this phone does that is a huge upgrade over the 14 Pro Max. The first one being is it's so much lighter. This is a heavy ass phone. It's made out of stainless steel. They went with titanium for this one, and it is shockingly lighter. I'm not joking. The second thing is the Wi-Fi in this thing just dominates this thing. I have seen this much higher. I've seen it closer to 1500 at times. So I don't know what the difference is, but I have found it to be much faster than the 14 Pro Max. And for me, that was an unexpected nicety. That's pretty much it. While I do think this is a great phone, as I've suspected all along, most of the updates we're getting from Apple are avoidable. They're unnecessary. And the 16 is kind of a meh improvement over this, but it does have a better battery. It does have USB-C. It's way better on thermal performance. So I guess for those 3 reasons, that's pretty great. But I don't know if those are good enough to actually upgrade. Like that's a substantial price, $1,600 to upgrade. And that's not even the big one. I didn't get the 1 terabyte, which is like closer to $1,900, $2,000. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you found this informative, insightful, or hell, even the least bit entertaining, do me a favor, hit the like button and consider subscribing. It's free. There's no commitment required. You can cancel at any time. And if you did like it that much and you want to be notified as to when I drop other videos, just hit that little alarm bell next to it. Well, thanks again for watching. I will catch you on the next one. Peace.